In this lesson, we will discuss about different parts of a computer system, and we will also see what is an information processing cycle. Now, as far as a computer system is concerned, it has four main parts. Number one, hardware. Number two, software. Number three, data. And number four, user. Now, let's see what is a hardware. All the physical components of a computer that can be touched physically are called hardware. All the devices in a computer constitute the hardware because you can physically touch them. Now, computer comprises of several interconnected devices. The hardware of a computer may either be internal or external. Now, let's see the difference between internal and external hardware. Internal hardware refers to the physical components inside a computer system. For example, the random access memory known as RAM, processor, hard drive, motherboard, power supply, and other internal devices, for example, the sound card and the video card. Okay, these all constitute the internal hardware. External hardware, on the other hand, refers to devices that are connected to the outside of a computer. For example, monitor, printer, scanner, mouse, keyboard, so on and so forth. Okay, so all these external devices that are connected to the outside of a computer, they are the external hardware. External hardware is also called peripheral devices. Okay, all the external devices that are connected to your computer are also known as peripheral devices. Okay, so these this figure shows you a scanner on the left, and you have a keyboard and mouse in the middle, and a printer and a monitor on the right side. Okay, now let's see what is a software. Software is a set of instructions that tell the computer what to do. Software is also referred to as a program. Now, software exists either for the computer itself to manage its resources, or it exists for the user to perform specific tasks, for example, creating a document. Now, examples of software could be Microsoft Word, Microsoft Excel, okay, Windows operating system, Adobe Photoshop, Adobe Illustrator. So all these are the software, and all of them are used for particular purposes. For example, Microsoft Word is an example of word processing software. You can edit a document using a Microsoft Word. Okay, and if you are dealing with financial data, you can use a Microsoft Excel. Then you have Windows family of operating systems, which is also an example of a software. Then photo editing software such as Adobe Photoshop is also a software. Graphics software such as Adobe Illustrator is another example of a software. Okay, so these are just few examples. You must bear in mind that there are thousands and thousands of different softwares that have been developed for different purposes. So what is a software? Software is the set of instructions that direct the computer what to do. It is also called a program, and software exists for computer to manage its own resources and for users to perform a specific task. Now, the next part of a computer system is the data. So, data, as we discussed earlier, is the bits of information or raw collection of facts that by themselves do not make any sense to the user. So the computer's primary job is to organize data and to bring it in presentable form. Okay. Now, the next part of a computer system is the user. User is the person who is operating the computer. So every computer system, even if it is completely autonomous, is dependent on the user for the installation of programs. So we may say that user is the most important part of the computer, okay? Because without the user, computer cannot perform any task. Even if it is totally autonomous, it is still dependent on the user for the installation of different programs. Now let's see what is an information processing cycle. Information processing cycle is the sequence of steps followed by a computer to process the data. What are these steps? These are number 1 input, number 2 processing, number 3 output, and number 4 storage. Now let's see the step number 1 of the information processing cycle, which is the input. Now during this part of the cycle, the computer accepts data from either a user or some program in order to process it. The step number 2 of the information processing cycle is processing. During this step, the computer's processing components, for example, a central processing unit, performs certain operations on the data based on the instructions that user provides or the instructions provided by a program. Step number 3 of the information processing cycle is the output. Now, if in this step the computer is bound to display the results of its processing. For example, it may be the case that the results appear as numbers or text or graphics, okay, on the computer screen, and it may also appear as sound from speakers, okay. A computer may also send output to a printer, okay, or it may send the output to another computer through a network, for example an internet, okay. So internet is basically an example of a computer network. It's a network of computer networks. We will discuss about it as we proceed further, okay. The last step of the information processing cycle is the storage. Now in this step the computer stores the results of its processing permanently on some device, for example hard drive, hard disk, okay, or magnetic tape or some other kind of storage medium, okay. So all of these 4 steps constitute the information processing cycle, and this is how the computer processes the data. So these are the steps involved in processing the data. So information processing cycle involves 4 different steps. In step number 1, the computer gets input from the user or a program. In step number 2, the computer's processing component, such as the central processing unit, processes the data. Okay, and we discussed earlier what do we mean by processing the data. Processing means performing some kind of arithmetic or logical operations on the data. Okay, in step number 3, the computer displays the results of the processing in the form of output. Okay, and in step number 4, the computer stores the results or the output to some storage medium such as the computer hard disk or a magnetic tape in order to store it permanently. Okay, so this brings us to the end of today's lesson. Hope you enjoyed it. Take care. See you soon.